Before we go any further, consider a simple yet dangerous question. Can a country collapse not because of its enemies, but because of the countless friends who claim they want to save it? Imagine a vast land in East Africa, one nation, yet its gold roots are coveted by Dubai. Its ports are targeted by Moscow. Its Nile waters are contested by Cairo, and every inch of its territory is watched from Washington's satellites. Every country says it wants to end the conflict. Every country insists it seeks only peace. But strangely, the more help arrived, the less likely the war was to stop. This is the story of Sudan. A nation not only fighting itself, but fighting the unseen shadows of global powers. And the deeper we dig, the more we find that the truth behind this war is more complicated, darker, and far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Sudan is no longer merely a nation gripped by civil war. It has become a deadly battleground for global influence. Since clashes erupted in April 2023 between the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, the conflict has evolved into a proxy war. One side receives support from Egypt and Gulf states, while the other leans on Russian networks through the Wagner Group. Although the international community calls for ceasefires and sends humanitarian aid, weapons, and military funds continue to flow into Sudan, driven by the scramble for gold from Darfur mines. More than 10 million Sudanese have been displaced and trapped in famine. To understand why this war is nearly impossible to stop, we must understand how Sudan reached this point. The turmoil began in 2019, when Omar al-Bashir's long regime fell under massive public protests. The revolution sparked hope for a transitional civilian government. But even after Bashir's fall, the military kept its grip on political and economic power. The absence of a clear agreement between the army and the RSF ignited a prolonged struggle. The situation exploded on April 15, 2023, when open fighting broke out between SAF, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and RSF, led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti. According to ACLED, the conflict stemmed from failed attempts to integrate RSF into the regular armed forces, combined with unresolved economic and military disputes left behind after Bashir's fall. During the transitional period, both factions expanded their influence across the country. Battles soon spread from the capital to the entire nation. Al Jazeera reports that from April 2023 to March 2025, Sudan witnessed over 11,000 political violence incidents, roughly 16 every day. At least 32,000 people were killed, excluding deaths from hunger, disease, and the collapse of public services. Khartoum, Al Jazeera, and Darfur became the deadliest hotspots. Human Rights Watch documented severe abuses by both SAF and RSF. Civilians were shot, hospitals were attacked, medical centers were destroyed, and people were detained without due process. One example is the RSF assault on an emergency clinic in the Al-Fashir displacement camp, which killed patients and injured medical staff. What began as a struggle between two generals quickly escalated into a geopolitical power contest. Sudan became a chessboard, and foreign powers began moving their pieces to serve their own agendas. Egypt views Sudan as a strategic buffer and a crucial lifeline. Through the Nile, Cairo openly supports SAF under al-Burhan, although Egypt initially claimed its soldiers were present only to protect Sudanese civilians. Reports show it provided training, logistics, and diplomatic support. Saudi Arabia plays a double role. On one hand, it leads the Jeddah talks with the United States to negotiate peace. On the other, it pursues major interests in ports, agriculture, and infrastructure along the Red Sea. For Saudi Arabia, Sudan's stability is vital for maintaining oil routes. Its support for SAF is also seen as a way to counterbalance the influence of the UAE and Russia. The UAE is perhaps the most controversial actor. Investigations show that the UAE functions as the main export hub for Sudanese gold controlled by the RSF and as a gateway for weapons and logistics. A 2024 UN report revealed that 90% of Sudan's gold is exported to Dubai, generating billions used to fund RSF operations. Although the UAE denies supporting the RSF, cargo evidence suggests otherwise. For the UAE, ties with the RSF connect directly to its broader strategic interests in Africa, including operations in Libya and Yemen. Russia also plays a major role through the Wagner Group. Wagner secured gold concessions during Bashir's era and later built a direct alliance with Hemeti. CNN reported weapons transfers from Russia through Syria and Libya to Western Sudan, reinforcing the RSF in return. Sudanese gold helps Russia bypass sanctions and replenish its reserves. Russia also has long-term plans for a naval base in Port Sudan, a strategic point on the Red Sea. Western nations engage mostly through diplomacy and humanitarian support, but with limited effect. The United States and Saudi Arabia repeatedly attempted ceasefire negotiations. This reveals that Sudan's war is a reflection of shifting global power in East Africa, a new, silent Cold War shaped not by ideology, but by gold, ports, and migration routes. Meanwhile, the Sudanese people suffer the most. Millions have lost access to food, clean water, healthcare, and safety. Sudan is now one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. As of October 2025, more than 11 million people have been displaced. Refugee camps are overcrowded, lacking clean water, sanitation, and medical care. Thousands of civilians have been killed in attacks, excluding deaths from starvation and untreated disease. Repeated assaults on hospitals and clinics have crippled the entire health system. Famine is now an unavoidable reality. Supply chains have collapsed, markets have vanished, and communities are trapped. Regions like Al-Fashir and Kadugli have entered famine conditions. Towns such as Tavila and camps across Darfur have become severely overcrowded after RSF captured key areas. Humanitarian groups describe conditions as catastrophic. Violence against civilians continues to rise, forcing tens of thousands to flee. Sudan's crisis has become a silent catastrophe, ignored by much of the world. Access for aid is nearly impossible. Funding is critically low, and foreign powers prioritize their interests over Sudanese lives. These layers of neglect create wounds that will scar Sudan for generations. Children face acute malnutrition. Education systems have collapsed, and the next generation will carry the weight of a crisis that will outlast the war itself.